Hello, this is Harry with Q&A staff. I don't hear any audio. Just want to let that know I don't hear any audio. No audio yet. Anybody from Magnum, perhaps they can message me in the chat or via my cell phone. Again, this is Harry with Q&A. Thank you.
issues, as well as making certain that they think about how do they improve diversity within the investment management field to make certain that investments are going to minority-owned small businesses. So, and then we also have Detriment Miller from M&T Bank. M&T Bank is a top 10 SBA lender, and Deidre has been administrative vice president. She's been with M&T for 12 plus years, oversees the minority and women-owned business team, and she is engaged to make certain that M&T is going to be having a diverse client base within their footprint. And she's got some great examples of the work that they've been doing with clients within their footprint in order to expand. And then we have Yolanda Stokes, who is the president CEO of Grebo. It's an award-winning collective that produces high-quality film, television, web, and print for the global brand. and successfully she's positioned this organization in the marketplace. Ms. Stokes is also very engaged with the National Women's Business Council, which is a nonpartisan federal advisory committee serving as an independent source of policy and advice to the President, Congress, and the U.S. Small Business Administration. So we're going to pick her brain on the ideas today that the National Women's Business Council has put forward to make certain that we can think about which of these ideas do we think we should be putting forward as part of the HOPE annual meeting. And last but not least, of course, we have Ted Archer from Chase. And Ted is the executive director within global philanthropy at JPM Chase, with over 300 million annually invested in communities and nonprofits. He joined Chase in 2016 and has a program that's called Heads Small Business Forward, which is looking to help target capital assistance to help small businesses grow faster, create jobs, and strengthen local communities. And Ted and I just talked about recently the really important role that Cdfis can bring in terms of bringing funding for small businesses into the community as well. So I'm very excited to get this going and so let's turn first, if I might, it to Kyle. And Kyle, could you talk to us a little bit about the concept that you were just describing in terms of the perhaps lack of underrepresentation that might exist in the investment community and how addressing that might be able to be useful in terms of tackling this problem?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Joanne, and nice to be with everyone today. So coming from the private equity industry, I think a lot about this challenge through the lens of an investor and what we as investors can do, what we can do as an investment industry to increase and expand capital access for minority-owned small businesses. The unfortunate, but frankly, probably not surprising state of affairs is that as an industry today, we're not doing very well on this front. From two different perspectives. I mean, one, diversity, equity, and inclusion within our own ranks as investors. And the second one is, how those investment budgets are being allocated to companies. When we look, at our diversity statistics as an industry, they're not good. They're frankly unacceptable. 85% of venture capitalists are white. Less than 1% are Black or Hispanic. Over 80% of venture capital firms don't even have a single Black investor. So there's massive underrepresentation within our own ranks. And then you look at where are dollars going in terms of investment dollars. In 2020 so far, less than 3% of venture capital and growth equity funding has gone to companies with Black or Latinx founders. And that number hasn't changed materially over the last 5 years. These issues are really linked, right? Where unconscious biases that we all have, unfortunately, translate into investors being more likely to invest in companies with founders that look like them or have similar backgrounds. And so, one of the ways that we can expand capital access for minority-owned small businesses is to make investment firms better representation to look more like the community of founders and entrepreneurs that are out there, so that this sort of unconscious bias doesn't play out. So that's one thought to get us started here.
Hey, thanks, Kyle, for that. And do you have anything more directive about an action step or some sort of policy that would make this happen?
Yeah, so I mean, KKR is a good example of some of the things that we're doing. Is we have explicit mandates to increase diversity amongst our teams and amongst the boards of our companies in which we invest. So we've made a commitment by year end to have at least 2 diverse members of the board of directors of every company we invest in, which is a portfolio of dozens of companies. Similarly, we have within our own ranks, when we're interviewing, we've made a commitment to expand to increase our diversity. We include we ensure there's inclusion of a diverse set of candidates for every position that we recruit for. And we, importantly, I think this is another action step, measure and report out publicly on our diversity statistics. Again, the old adage goes, you manage what you measure. And so by reporting those statistics and putting those out there transparently, we can understand, hey, here's where we are today. We're not happy about it. We want to make progress, but we're gonna report transparently. And if other companies are doing the same thing, I think that lends itself to increased scrutiny and focus on this, and more pressure to change and improve.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I do think, focus on governance reporting and tracking hiring standards and diversity, really, really an important issue for all of us, right? So Detriment, tell me more about small business lending at M&T Bank. What is being successful for you? How are you getting out in the marketplace and finding opportunities to invest along with entrepreneurs?
Sure. So thank you so much, Joanne, for having me. Thank you for the question. I'm really excited to be a part of this panel today. So I would say for us, I started the group that we have about a little over a year ago. And for me, it was just going out into the market, and we do great with small businesses. We are really proud of our status with the SBA. We were just made number 5 on the list. So we're number 5 nationally in terms of SBA lending. And we are number 1 in 7.
Credit for number 5 earlier. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. But no, it went from 7 to 6 to 5. So we're really happy about that, because it does allow us to provide access to capital in ways that we wouldn't necessarily be able to without having the SBA guaranteeing our loan. So that's something that we're extremely proud of. In terms of my team, I came to my executives and said, look, I think there's an opportunity here as we look at who are growing and starting businesses. A lot of those numbers are in women and people of color, but unfortunately, in terms of you look at the fastest segment, which is Black females, while they have the largest number of businesses being started, their annual sales revenue is actually declining. So for me, it was really, really important to, let's put together a system, really be an ecosystem for these small business owners and helping them overcome the obstacles, like gaining access to capital, like creating strong networks, like having mentors to help them get through tough times. And through that, we just create some really great partnerships and helping individuals gain access to resources. And that's what I feel like it's come down to, is not having all the information, not having all the resources. There's so much information out there, but it's overload. So a lot of these business owners, they believe they have to go on this journey alone because they just don't have the access to the information. Similar to what Kyle was saying, banking hasn't always been kind to communities of color, right? And we're now realizing that a lot of people have now become awakened in the aftermath of George Floyd and the systems that have been in place for communities of color. So when you look at banks and bankers, the industry has been dominated by white females for very long. And so, it's really upon us, it's our role to really make sure that we have a fiscal responsibility in ensuring that, our employee base is representative of the communities in which we serve, to make sure that we're going out and about in all communities and developing relationships with all people. So that's something that we're really, really focused on in our D&I plan, to really make sure that we are, reimagining what this looks like in terms of community banking, like really being a part of the community, which is really, really important to us. So I believe, being more proactive and intentional, seeking out color, seeking out, organizations and networks that help communities of color and women. I think that's going to be the key to really making this, for us to see a big, substantial change in the industry.
Thank you for that, teacher. That's really important. It seems to me, having a network of support, and mentors would be incredibly important, as being an entrepreneur is challenging, and there's a lot riding on this. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works and who you might be partnering with, or ideas about how to flesh that out a little further?
Certainly. So I do think it's all about building trust. And many times you may see it as a competition, but for me, what's really important is building relationships with local Cdfis, right? So if it becomes a situation where I'm unable to help a client in terms of lending, it doesn't mean that I can't help them on the deposit side. So if the lending is something that we need to overcome, work with the local CDFI for now until you kind of graduate into the next level for life. The one term that I hate, and I hear people say this all the time, is not being bankable. Everyone's bankable. Everyone needs an account. It's being able to access credit from a traditional bank might be a little bit different, but that doesn't mean that we can't all wrap our arms around these businesses and support them. So working with local CDFIs, working with our governor's office and our mayor's office of small minority women-owned business, working with organizations that cater to working with minority and women-owned businesses, seeking out attorneys. There are some attorneys that specialize in helping small businesses get through the certification process. So having those types of relationships, and also working with local chambers and economic development centers. Last year we had a program with our Small Business Resource Center called the 0 to 100 program, and it really was to help educate business owners, help give them the tools to really, help their businesses grow. All about getting license, permits from the city and the state. How to go about organizing your business. Getting your financials in order. Talking about your credit score. So all of these things that people would think that you go and start a business and you know them automatically, and you don't necessarily know that. You know what you're really good at. The trade that you decided I want to go out and start a business. But in terms of the financial piece, you may not have everything there, and no one's asking you to be the expert. And that's where it's our job, and helping you grow a network to really help you have those different tools in your toolbox on that journey to success.
Thank you so much. That is fascinating. And it's so nice to see that you're creating this really comprehensive plan to really embrace these small businesses to help them be successful and help them understand the aspects of creating a business that may not be central to what their skill set was and why they chose to be in business, right? And so, Yolanda, you probably have some wonderful examples. Here you are, your own business owner, and I'd love it if you'd be kind enough to share with your life story here a little bit. And what did it feel like to start your own business? And what are the things that you wish that someone had done for you along the way?
Wow, such a great question. I want to thank you, Joanne, for hosting such an important segment, and Operation Hope. And the sponsors for such thoughtfulness in getting this information out. When I think about me 20 years ago, when I started my company, I'm listening to Kyle and Deisha talk about all of the things that I wish I had in starting that. I didn't have a circle of friends or family with enough capital to support me in launching the business. I went to banks, and that was definitely not the way to go. And even when you think about sort of angel investment and what that does to the ownership of the company as you try to qualify for different minority business segments, it's all impacted. And so you're talking about somebody who, I'm from Baltimore City, and in that had one of those sort of struggle type upbringings. My father was in and out of the penal system. My mother doing everything that she could on what she had for my brother and I. And so for us, we recognize the importance of education. We recognize, you do all of those steps. You graduate cum laude, you do all of those things, and then you launch a business. And still at the end, it's where does the money come? Where is access to capital and all of that? I even went into a career field. My degree is electrical engineering with the thought that you graduate, in engineering, you'll absolutely be able to, find something. But I consider myself a triple minority. I am a female, I'm African American, and I'm left-handed. So just try playing golf being a lefty. And it doesn't, but I'm joking, but I say all of that to say that the networks were not there along the way. And so for my business, it was very incremental in our growth. We would get a contract, we staff up to support that contract. And, there were some that we had to turn away because we just didn't have enough capital to sustain being able to carry those large contracts. And it's funny, in Baltimore, one of our major corporations here is Under Armour. We started our company at around the same time that Under Armour started. And you can see the difference in what happens when you have capital sort of to launch and expand on some of those things in terms of resources. And so that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about this conversation today.
Thank you. That is really exciting. And I do understand you have the capital to get started at the very beginning, what a remarkable difference that would make. And so knowing that there was others investing in you. And what we do see a fair amount of at FICO, and I'm interested in your perspective on this, is that many small business owners initially rely on their own personal credit. So many of them, it's a personal line of credit, maybe it's a home equity line. And, what recommendation would you have for, starting there and thinking about how to transition to business credit? We spent a lot of time at FICO helping educate folks about how at least the score works and how to make certain that you can get to your target score. But we want to make certain that they understand the risk a little bit associated with tying their business to also their personal credit. So, Yolanda, anything you'd add?
No, thank you. And it's a number of things that come to mind. I think one of the things that Detriment brought up is when you look at the layers of systemic racism that exist, in many cases, we didn't have the equity behind what we were doing to even support some of the investments personally. So I leveraged early on in business with credit cards and all of those types of things. Early on, didn't have a home that I could, put as, credit against some of what I was doing. And so those, there sort of ebb and flow to where it is. I do agree, if you do have an opportunity to invest early on in your business, doing it that way, I think that that's a great thing. They also love the adage of using other people's money to help grow your business. But in lieu of having that, I do believe that you guys offer an amazing opportunity, right? To do that. It's you're still being in a position to do that. And so when you don't have good credit, when you don't have, anything to sort of provide support for your credit or anything like that, it does still present some challenges. And I think that along the way, you all are also creating opportunities. And I think the big key is education, right? For how we start to get back to a place that we can take advantage of that.
Great, thank you for that. Hey, so Ted, last but not least here, I'm very interested to learn a little bit more about the work that you're doing in terms of outreach and working with Cdfis in order to make certain that we're getting capital in the hands of small business entrepreneurs and minority-owned businesses. Can you talk to us a little bit about the outreach that Chase is doing, please?
Well, first, Joanne, I want to thank you for moderating this important panel, and also to the team at Operation Hope for putting on yet again a great global forum. I was really struck by the conversation that we've had so far, because it's really laid out much of what our work is so involved in, which is creating a system of support to help small businesses succeed. And in any system of support, you need access to money, markets, management skills and expertise, and obviously mentors and networks. So what Kyle, Detra, and Yolanda laid out was the need to have all these things in an interconnected way really work for small businesses. And in my role at JP Morgan Chase, kind of a similar lens to what Detra described, we're part of the financial system. And in order to make the financial system work for more and more businesses, we for years have been working on an explicit and intentional focus on communities of color. And there's a good reason for that, right? Communities of color, the Black community, if we want to pinpoint the place where we have the widest gap and the most opportunity, is a place where far too often those barriers exist and people are shut out. And if there was parity, right, if that disparity did not exist, we'd have a lot more businesses, a lot more jobs, and a lot more income in the US. And to be exact, we'd have 1 million more businesses, we'd have 9 million more jobs, we'd have about $300 billion in more worker income. And those are things that we can't leave on the table. That's wealth that our community needs. And so frankly, understanding the role of the financial system and our place in it, understanding why there needs to be an explicit focus on communities of color, knowing that it's about collective action, that really no one institution, that we are a big piece of it, can do it all. And it takes extending the reach of what we can do through community partners. And then last but not least, I think I would add just a bit of the importance of data and why in my, I think, unique seat at JP Morgan Chase, I work in the foundation, but I'm an employee of the bank. It's our responsibility to understand how we can use our transactional data, through our JP Morgan Chase Institute to lift up issues as it relates to why it is that some businesses, particularly businesses owned by people of color, have less access to external financing. A bit of what Kyle started the conversation with, what Detra expounded on as to why we need to work with community lenders, and what Yolanda mentioned as a bit of a broken access point for her and for other small businesses. And so it's in the weaving together of information that we can glean from our own transactional data. It's in working with policymakers to understand why there needs to be an explicit focus and strengthening of institutions like community lenders, like Black-owned banks, like Cdfis, who are really proximate to these issues, to really lift up why it is that we need to create a system of support that's not just about any one class or one loan or one investment, but it's about a just-in-time sort of environment where small businesses, especially those owned by women and people of color, have access to everything they need to grow and really close the disparity that's going to hold our communities back and hold our country back.
Thank you, Ted, for that. That's a very thoughtful response. Right before we got on, we were talking about the various threads associated with the OCC project, which I know that JPM Chase is one of the key participants within that program. And there is one of the projects is specifically around, I think, further investment in minority-owned banks. Could you speak to that a little bit? In terms of
Absolutely.
how you think that
Yes.
help in terms of increase minority homeowner, minority entrepreneurship and business ownership.
Absolutely, Joanna. And I want to commend all of our government agency, partners, the Department of Treasury, who's been at this for some time, lifting up the need to support minority depository institutions, certainly the Fed, but in this case, the FDIC. I mean, there are a number of ways in which private enterprise should be looking at solving for access to financing, solving for access to bank services as more than just a one-size-fits-all, but as more than just our parochial corner of the universe. And so we've been involved, JP Morgan Chase has been involved in working closely with minority depository institutions as an outgrowth of the Department of Treasury's Mentor Protege program. And there are two banks in particular that we work with directly, but there's also need for us to do more and for others to do more. And so our work with Liberty Bank based in New Orleans and Harvard Bank based in Baltimore is emblematic of that. And I think what Project Reach does is it creates a bit of a playbook for why it is that MDIs are walking that last mile, frankly, in places that larger banks would need to partner to and would need to partner in order to best meet the needs of small businesses and consumers. And in our work at Chase and in the work that I'm involved in, we've been involved in not just lifting up why these institutions need investment, but also what it is that we can do in our part to ensure, as I think Detra mentioned earlier, that where our services stop, theirs begins. There's a feedback loop of communication where a small business who does bank at a community bank, at an NDI, can then access the services needed there. And if there are additional services that they can access, that they can do so at a larger bank. And I'll just end with this point. And if we take a look at what's happened through our government intervention programs as and the impact of COVID and what that's meant, we know that in that first week that there were fewer Black-owned businesses and Latinx-owned businesses, much fewer, who could access Paycheck Protection Program loans. And a lot of that just has to do with relationships with your institution, your access to the financial system. And as the program evolved and as more and more community lenders, more proximate organizations to community got involved, we saw that disparity was closed. And so I think that's a really good example of how our government partners can play a significant role in understanding where gaps exist, and then for larger banks and larger institutions to step up and make a way for supporting the needs of small business owners throughout the country.
Thank you so much for that, Ted. And Deetra, I know that we talked a little bit briefly too about the PPP program and what that meant to small businesses. Could you explain a little bit about how you think that program worked through M&T, and are there things that you would do in retrospect to improve it and do more?
Yeah, so it was a scary time for everyone, right, going through that
Yes.
process. And so many people, like Ted was saying, felt like they were locked out, and essentially they kind of were, right? By the time many people were able to make the decision in terms of communities of color and women, the money, at least for the first round, was gone. So what we learned through that process really did rely on the relationships. So how do we build those stronger relationships with larger financial institutions? You know, we were really proud of the work that we did. We approved 35,000 PPP applications for about $7 billion, and us being a more of a regional bank. But it was heartbreaking watching so many people go through that time period, being nervous that their businesses weren't going to survive. You know, many businesses did not, and it really all came down to the relationship and ensuring that, you know, if you had a strong relationship at an organization, many of those times they were able to tell you what you needed before the money became available. So that's what it came down to, you know, who had access to information and who got to it first. And I think that's taught us a really good lesson in our country, just, you know, really solidify the things that Ted was saying. The things that Ted was saying is just, it really is about how do we provide access to all people. I definitely think we saw that with the Cdfis and the community banks, really just giving them the second round of funding. Like it's opened up for those people. So I think that's a big lesson for all of us to learn.
Thank you for that, Deetra. Thank you. You know, Shalanda, sorry, go ahead. Was there a comment for someone? Okay. Shalanda, going back to you, you talked about your triple minority. And so, but I'd also suggest that an engineer and a woman, that's not as common as well. And, you know, we talked a little bit about the importance of, you know, really investing in people so that they have the right educations going forward. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more about your view on STEM education and how do we make certain that we are investing in the future for college students, and particularly using the historically Black colleges in that regard as well, Shalanda.
No, thank you so much. That's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I actually had an opportunity now in serving on the National Women's Business Council. I know you mentioned that earlier, talking about what we do as a council in providing advice and policy recommendations to the president, to Congress, and to the SBA, which is interesting. And so for us as a council, we really prioritize our areas around access to capital, around STEM, around rural outreach for some of those businesses that are focused on women and minority businesses in that right. In particular, as it relates to STEM education piece and what's so key, as I mentioned, I went into that field primarily because I knew I would be able to get a job, you know, coming out of that. But what you don't think about is so many women and so many minorities who do not go into those fields and why they do. In there. And when you look at tech and all of those things, those are fields that can really become game changers in terms of economic output and income. And so within the National Women's Business Council, one of the things that we really focused on as you start to talk about, well, what are some things that can be done? We really know that the National Sciences Foundation should really prioritize studying women and girls in computer science in particular, in its grant making, right? As well as highlighting what are the best practices. You know, Congress should really look at how they expand the scope of NSF grant research, right? For female students, I remember doing research in college, and you start to think about what happens beyond that. And then go even further when you think about the number of patents that don't come out, right? That we don't typically do in the area of minorities and all of that. And those are game-changing ways that we can elevate the game and opportunity for us to really grow in the STEM field.
Yes, and speaking of the complexity of patents, so we've got a world of people who do that here for us at FICO. But that, you know, as they think about that for a small business entrepreneur, very, very complicated to navigate that. And so, you know, Kyle, is that something that you would think of as important as you're thinking about investment portfolios and how to invest? And are there ways that we could help folk more around, you know, thinking about how to capitalize on their IP and protect their IP?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, again, I think the one of the challenges that we face is, or I would say that you know, minority founders face is that they don't. They may not have access to the resources that and the knowledge and expertise that others may have. And so I think the educational programs that, you know, through Operation Hope, through others, of actually reaching out and saying, you know, look, if you have a good idea, there's steps you can take to protect that idea. There's steps you can take to trademark the copyright. And you know, I think, you know, all entrepreneurs could use education around those topics. And you know, one of the challenges that today is that some groups of entrepreneurs have, you know, more access to that than others. And so I think that's absolutely a step that we can take through you know, broader educational efforts.
Thanks, Kyle. I think we're coming close to the time where we're supposed to have our attendees break off to come up with their ideas, but I'm going to just do a quick 30-second round with our experts here to say, if you were going to suggest the top thing that you think would be most impactful, what would you say it is? And so let's quick go to Yolanda.
I think so many, but I do think the SBA should continue to prioritize and make permanent approval for Cdfis and minority depository institutions as eligible lenders across all SBA loan programs.
Detriment? Put you guys on the hot seat here.
Yeah, I know. For me, relationships, that's the biggest thing. You know, how do we form those relationships? How do we bring back the trust or create the trust, frankly, that hasn't really been there? And I think that would come down to the different financial institutions really making it mandatory for looking at the number of business owners that you're reaching out to, and what's the diversity makeup of the client base that you're going after. So I think it has to you know, boil down to that, like really being intentional.
Intentional, goal-based, measured. Yep. Great. Thank you, Detriment. Ted?
I'd build on that and say, if we are serious about being explicit with respect to our economic recovery and equity, if we want to create equity in our communities, we need to ensure that we have a focus on underserved communities with the opportunity to frame it as just an opportunity. And so I'm in philanthropy, so let us invest in organizations led by and for people of color. That's the way to walk the last mile to ensure that we get to a recovery that's equitable for all people.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Ted. And Kyle, last thoughts?
Yeah, no, great ideas from everyone. I think my idea would frankly be a combination of those that have been said already, which is, I mean, let's measure and report and have transparency around where SBA funds are going. Let's hold banks accountable for how those funds are being allocated, and let's look at, I mean, if those funds are going to a set of entrepreneurs or set of founders that don't reflect the underlying communities from which they're coming, then we've got a problem, and then that at least puts it on the table that we can go address the problem.
Great. So I'm hearing a lot about transparency and measuring and making certain that we're doing the right things together. This has been fantastic. So I need to see, how do we next move to the next session? Looking for a little technical support of finding who might be willing to be the moderator for the upcoming time period that you have together to come back and report out what you think the top 5 ideas are from this session.
Hi, Joanne. This is Harry with the Hope Global Forum staff. I will be going ahead and assigning everyone into their rooms. And thank you all again for speaking today. And I just want to let everyone know they'll be moving to the next session shortly. Yeah, so in just a few moments, I will be placing everyone into the rooms that they're assigned to. I'm trying to make sure that there's enough volunteers in each group just to be able to lead the sessions and make sure that we can keep the ideas moving, get everybody a chance to speak. I provided a link in the chat where this is where we'll be submitting the notes. And as soon as the breakouts return to the main session, that's when we'll have those volunteers specifically speak up for their group. Does that sound okay?
That
Awesome.
sounds fantastic.
Fantastic. All right, so I'll be going ahead and assigning everybody in just a few moments. All right, thank you all so much.
Just for clarity, because I don't see in the chat a link. Did he say he's going to, or he has?
Yes.
There will be a link. So for the panelists, thank you all so much for your participation. This is just for the participants. What's going to happen is we'll actually bring you out into the main room. So this specifically for the HGF staff volunteers to take notes based on each of the participant groups. I can go ahead and drop that note in the chat again.
And what were the top 5 ideas, Joanne? What did you say that we're supposed to be engaging with?
So this is your assignment, is to come back and tell us what the top 5 ideas should be in order to increase the pipeline of capital access for minority-owned small businesses. So this is your task is to come back and report out, what do you think based upon this discussion today, Operation Hope and others should be focused on in order to improve minority homeowner. I keep saying homeownership, sorry. I've been spending so much time on that. Minority-owned business entrepreneurship.
Got it. Thank you. This was Nitasha Starr from Operation Hope.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody, we're going to be moving to the sessions right now.
Thank you.
Again, there may be a couple people that may have joined late, so we're going to go ahead and put them in their rooms. And again, for you folks on the panel, you're just going to hang tight.
Can we speak with each other?
Yeah, you can feel free to speak. All of the participants are in the breakouts. I will mention that this session is recorded, so I think perhaps I'll ask the technician to go ahead and just mute it for the stream of for the Zoom. So you should be able to speak with each other internally though. Give me one moment.